Hey everyone, I want to talk all about acceptance doesn't mean agreement. It's one of the main principles of OCD and anxiety recovery. On the outline in front of me, I have different themes and fears where I can't go into all of them in extreme detail. This will be more of an oversight overview of particular fears and the main principles of how acceptance doesn't mean agreement kind of comes in there and convinces you of 1,000 different things. Am I liking my thoughts? Am I agreeing with my thoughts? If I'm disputing my fears, does that mean I'm agreeing with my thoughts? Because there's a big misconception out there in the OCD and anxiety community around thoughts versus fears. I always say you can usually tell when someone understands OCD if they're putting more merit into the thoughts when they're speaking about the help they provide and or the core fears. Because obviously OCD takes orders from beliefs and thoughts will have to be left to play out as needed. And same with intrusive images, sensation, and urges. So before I go any further, please subscribe, hit that like button down below. Let me know what you think about this. Again, I've been really enjoying this outline format. I think it makes the videos they're just more concise when I want to talk about particular fears that sometimes there's so many intricate details and I love turning the camera on and just talking. I think that improv and intuitiveness is amazing, but some of the newer ones have been kind of thinking this works a little bit better. So again, let me know if you've been liking some of these formats. So acceptance doesn't mean agreement is a critical aspect of life. And it is important to highlight that the majority, if not all humans by default, whether it's innately or biologically or socioeconomically or just socially, religiously, everything politically, operate off acceptance means agreement. I'll give you an example, simple one. I'm a Christian, you're a Catholic, we can't accept each other. I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican, I can't accept each other. I'm gay, you're straight, we can't accept each other. It's all about this. Then, oh, I'm gay, you're gay. Oh, we can accept each other. Agreement means acceptance. Not what it means, but that's how the whole world works. If everyone operated off acceptance doesn't mean agreement, which would be completely impossible because you can't change the world. There probably would be no wars, not a lot of problems. Of course, there's people out there with different brain structures, but it would be much less violence, I'd have to imagine. So the books are vital. Starting small is key. You're not going to be able to come in with a fear of, POCD fear, incest, harm, losing control, self-harm, suicide, everything like that. You're not going to break those fears down overnight because you're absolutely convinced you cannot move with acceptance means agreement. If you have fears about losing control and harming a loved one, harm OCD mother with their child, you're not going to wrap your head around that overnight or tomorrow or next week or next month or probably the next few months. So there's other things that we can work on when we're doing the coaching calls, which is very specific, breaking down individual fears with lots of homework assignments. And my stuff does look like this, and the one I'm doing tomorrow will be really good because that's going to be on OCD and addiction. I'm going to talk about my struggles with addiction and everything else in between. So starting small is good. The ones I always recommend are coffee lines, traffic, little things like that. Yes, they're frustrating. Yes, they're part of life, but you could start with those things. And I think that would be really good. I already covered that the world moves in the opposite direction. So accepting that the world is going to be highly irrational is a very important part of this. So these are the ones I want to talk about, and I'll give an example of each one. Fear, harm/self-harm, existential/solipsism, ROCD, jail, POCD, incest, morals, and addiction. The most important thing to remember is that when you're accepting this, you are going towards your worst case scenario, but you're not bolting it down like a monk. A lot of the stuff when it comes to harm and POCD and the morals, you don't have to bolt it down. It's not about agreeing with it. A lot of people are saying, are you saying I have to agree with the possibility of being a murderer? No, it really comes down to a lot of rejection, fear of rejection. That's the angle we're really coming from, not the very specific aspects of it at time, but the general sense of rejection from society and rejection of yourself and losing your values. So the fear of fear. The number one, and I'll actually use the book because I always keep it on handy. So and I'll go into it, like I said, specific acceptance doesn't mean agreement, belief off each one. So the goal for this is to get better with acceptance doesn't mean agreement on fear of fear. The rational belief would be, I don't like being stuck forever. Keyword, I don't like the fact I could be stuck forever. How frustrating, but too bad. How can I try better to recover without doing it compulsively? How do I become comfortable with my sensations? I always tell people, I lived many years with chronic sensations while I went about my life. I didn't like it, but it was there in the background, a lot in the background. And you would have never known. No one would have ever known. And that's very important to cover. Because everyone thinks they're going to lose control, and obviously you have to break that down, but that is the main thing. You can become very accepting with chronic anxiety 24/7. You don't need to be doing confession or venting or compulsions. It could just be there because your nerves will be very sensitized. Harm and self-harm. So when you have the fear of losing control, the number one thing you want to work on from a belief standpoint is you're never going to get certainty on that. You could set yourself up with a maze in your home and your home physically with all your knives removed and not being around sharp objects, and in your mind, but you're not going to be able to do it forever the way you think, because OCD just moves the goalpost more and more and more and more. So that's key. Okay? Existential. So that's what the belief would look like. The belief for existential would look something along the lines of this. I don't like feeling like I'm the only person on earth. I don't like the simulation feeling and the fact I'll probably have no real connection, but I can make the best of this and try to connect to people as if they're already simulations. But you're holding that with no matter what, I must get certainty on if I'm in a simulation or not, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how you're coming from that. ROCD is, was one of my biggest fears that I wasn't even aware of. That is always coming from that perspective of, there's no way I could accept being in a relationship where there's no feeling of attraction or love. That's not true. I had sex with my wife. I went on dates with my wife, feeling very angry at her, disgusted at her because I was very afraid of feeling that, because I struggled with anger, because I had a little bit of a fear. I had a big fear of losing control and not being able to handle my anger. That scared the living shit out of me because I was so afraid of losing the relationship. And that's why anger, and that becomes a mini theme for a lot of people. So I had to become very comfortable with the anger sensations. But I also had to realize that I could dislike the realities if my wife left me because she didn't want to be with me anymore. Dating an OCD sufferer is not easy. So when our partners end up leaving us, totally understandable. I mean, shit. Gosh, we can be so pesterly annoying. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you want to be with me? Blah, 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 blah. Imagine you didn't have OCD and that was the person you were dating. That is a key thing to remember. That's why it's so important to zip your mouth and not talk about it all the time. So it's not just for you. It's also for them in that regard. Give them a break. Very important. Hold yourself accountable with that. Jail. Jail's the biggest one. Many people deserving this, moral fears, realizing that even if you went to jail, you could fight. Yeah, and I know some of you what you're thinking. Yeah, but jail's really, really bad for the P and harm OCD fears. You're right. It would be very, very tough. And you have probably would probably have more tough moments than good moments for sure, but you could learn something from those good moments even in isolation. Okay? POCD and incest, same principle, same thing. You're looking at the rejection fears. Go from societal rejection, go from the fears of losing your values, getting very comfortable with groinal responses and urges. Super important to lean into that. The way you view groinal responses and the way you view false attraction to people that you might not be able to consent with is a large determining factor which is driving the cycle for sure. Moral responsibility, same thing. Just think about anything. Let's go over you accidentally hurt someone emotionally by yelling at them. Fear of losing control and yelling at someone. That's a big one. So I don't like the fact that I yelled at that person. It's very frustrating. I'm having a hard time getting my anger under control. How can I do better next time? Instead of, no matter what, I must get my anger under control. If I don't, it's awful. I can't stand it. This is the worst thing ever. By the way, and this is a little bit off topic about this part, you're not going to feel better just looking at this now. You're doing the exercises in the book. You're reading it. You're writing out the exercises to set you up for a better thinking in the future, not in a moment-to-moment basis. That is so important to cover. I have people that say to me all the time, yeah, I did that, didn't work. That's because it doesn't work like that. Acceptance is a state of being, okay? Addiction. Let's just leave addiction for the next video because I'm going to do a whole entire video on addiction. The main principle is that, remember, OCD takes orders from beliefs. Very important. And on top of that, I know this is very difficult. When you have a moral related responsibility, deservingness, the most important thing is unconditional self-acceptance. Accepting yourself as the fallible human being you are. You cannot change your brain, allowing your brain to do whatever it wants, looking at your worst case scenario, getting better at not venting and all the compulsive sides, and slowing the process down. That is so critical. Hope you guys like this video. Again, start small. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Because the world sees this backwards, by the way. If someone cuts you off in traffic, they're like, why would you let them off the hook? You have to let them know they did something bad. That is absolutely ludicrous and does not need to happen and does not give you any real power. Real power comes from silence, not needing to prove people wrong. How do I know that? More than likely, is because I lived my whole life the opposite. And I had this false sense of power, yelling at people, debating people, telling them they were idiots, telling them I was right. That's a never-ending chase. As Alan Watts says, there's never a need to act manly. Society makes it think you have to act manly, but you never need to act manly because a lot of that comes from fear of rejection. A lot of it. And I really struggle with that, and I really had to break that down. I was very, very afraid of rejection, as we all are naturally, from herd mentality and everything else we talk about. So thank you again. Please let us know if you want us to help you on this. This is very, very important. We go back and watch Kirsty's video on agreement doesn't mean acceptance. Probably 2 years old. And if you need help, Phil at OCDrecovery.com, and we hope to hear from you soon. Have a good one, everyone.